Hey guys, Jessica here. Today on Low Res with Jess, we have my friend and photographer, Kaylee June. Kaylee is a beauty and fashion photographer based between Sydney and Melbourne, discovering photography at the young age of 15. Over the years, Kaylee has developed a style to reflect her interest in the latest trends of makeup and fashion, using vivid tones and distinct lighting to differentiate her work. Her passion and drive to succeed in the industry has also led her to take on a role of an educator, creating a YouTube photography tutorial channel, amassing over 70,000 subscribers. And you forgot one thing in your bio, that I was your biggest fan starting out. That's how we met. You guys,
I definitely should have included Jess in there.
and her biggest fan was Jessica.
That's how we met, right?
For those who don't know, Kaylee is one of my best friends. I've known her for 11 years. Has it been 11 years now?
It's been a while.
I knew Kaylee when I first started photography because what happened was I was on DeviantArt looking up portrait work and I came across one of your pictures. It was of a model in this long dress in like a garden. I was like, this is stunning. I need to know who shot this. And I was just starting out. So I sent you a message and I remember that you were one of the only people to ever message me back because I was like a photography fangirl messaging other photographers.
Oh my God.
The only person to message me back was you. You were such a real one. And
I seriously saw your work though. I remember the first time you ever messaged me, I think it was like maybe Twitter or something. And it was like over 10 years ago now. And I remember you messaging me and seeing your work and I was like, oh my gosh, like you have something. And I remember you saying you hadn't even started that long ago. And I was just like, I was blown away. Your work, even in the beginning, was just amazing, like incredible. Seriously.
You were my inspiration though.
Well, you became mine as well. So we kind of I know we helped each other out for a very long time. I feel like we just had we went through the struggles together. You know, the struggles of feeling like we needed to give up. Like every day we were talking to each other. Like every time we were speaking on Facebook, you know, it would be like, okay, today I'm quitting. I'm not doing photography ever again. Like I'm done.
I love how dramatic we were. We're just like, this is it.
I know.
I suck.
I remember them starting off I'd message you and be like, okay, so I'm quitting. And literally this would just be like a revolving circle. Like it would happen day to day. But, you know, we were always there for each other. We always helped build each other up, which was lovely. You know, I couldn't have done it without you.
I mean, it's crazy because you knew me before any of the YouTube stuff. And before I even really started portraiture or anything like that, you were there. Yep. So you were such a big part of not only my life, but my career as a photographer. Like you said, you were there for me. It's so good to have a friend who is so supportive throughout everything. So I love you for that. So this is my little thank you. This is my little thank you.
Well, you were that support system for me too. Like you were the one that got me onto YouTube in the first place because it was something that I thought about doing, but I was always like, I don't really know what to do if I was to do YouTube. But you were the one that pioneered, and then you were like, girl, you got to get on here. You've got to be doing this. It's so much fun. And my whole life changed really around that. So I hate to think not even of meeting you, how my life would have gone as a photographer. I probably would have given up at some point. I don't know. I just felt you know, we were different people, I guess, 10 years ago too. We were so much more I guess with our work and, you know, creative life, you know.
It was a struggle, but it's nice to have somebody who can relate to you. And we would message all the time on Facebook Messenger, do our Skype calls and then FaceTimes. And then we eventually, we still do. Yeah. And then we eventually ended up meeting for the first time in Korea, which I want to get to eventually. But before before that, it's a whole story.
We're gonna have stuff to talk about there.
Before that, tell everybody how you started photography. How did you even get started posting on DeviantArt?
Oh my gosh. So I think the first time I probably ever posted on DeviantArt was maybe 2007. So I was still in high school at the time, and I had basically gotten onto DeviantArt out of chance because I was still figuring out what I wanted to do in my career at the time. And I was a bit lost being, you know, typical teenager. I was really creative in school, but I was never that good at art. Like I always kind of sucked at art. So I was kind of like, I need some sort of creative outlet that I can do, but just maybe not drawing or painting. And then I just sort of came across photography when I was traveling with my family overseas. We went on a trip when I was about 14, 15. And then when I got home from that trip, I really realized from that I love taking photos. And then that's when I sort of found DeviantArt. I don't know, I just kind of stumbled across it one day when I was looking at photographs of, I think it was like lightning or travel photography or something like that. And I just saw other people's work and I was just in awe from it. At like 15 years old, I was like, I didn't know you could take photos like that. And then I started to find even more people around my age on DeviantArt and seeing people like Lara Jade who were doing these like conceptual photos that were just, I don't know, they were so intriguing to me at the time. And just so many inspirations, like just so many young people on DeviantArt doing their creative thing. And that was really inspiring to me. And then that was definitely what set me off on the path of photography. And I pretty much haven't looked back since.
Isn't it crazy how the community on DeviantArt for photography had that was such a huge foundation for so many photographers?
Yes. Like, and even still to this day, I get messages from people being like, I think I still remember your work on DeviantArt and things like that. I'm like, oh my God, no, I will never go back and have a look at my DeviantArt. It's crazy to think like that was probably nearly 14 years ago now that was the first time I sort of like found DeviantArt. 14, 15 years. It's like nearly half my life has been photography now. And it was just such a great place to start, I think, and such a great place to be creative initially because there was no boundaries. You know, I think as you get older and you narrow your work down and you start to get a little bit more specific with what you want, sometimes the creativity leaves or you feel like it does. And you're like, oh, I wish I had that creative mind still that I did back when I was, you know, on DeviantArt and I was able to get inspired so easily. I do miss that from time to time.
I do agree. It's crazy how even as our work progresses and we get better, we learn and we do so many photo shoots, we still look at our old work from like 20 years ago and we're like, that, how did I even do that? Like, can we go back to that for a second?
How did I get that concept? Like, how did I think of that? How did I and stick with it? Like, especially with series and things like that. I feel like now, I don't know, it's a different feel. It's not that I don't enjoy that side of things anymore, but you definitely feel like there's other things at play. Like you obviously need to earn a living. You need to, you know, pay your rent. You need to pay your way in life, basically. And sometimes just being creative or just having that creative mindset doesn't always sort of allow for that, which is kind of sad because I think that's my one goal for this year, actually. Like when I was doing some goal setting a few weeks ago, I was like, you know, this year I just want to do more of the work that I want to do, that I'm so happy to create instead of just doing it for feeling like I have to. I don't know. That's just kind of what I want to see for this year.
So when you were 15 starting out, like how did you even know you wanted to do photography? Did you just go to the store, pick up a camera, or were you introduced to it?
I don't know. Like I think DeviantArt was like, and seeing other people's work was one part of it. But then there was something nice to know that obviously, like I said before, I was not very good at drawing and painting. Like I like to think that I was, but then, you know, looking back now, I'm like, well, I'm definitely glad I didn't go through that, you know, that career path. But I think just from the first time I had a camera in my hands, I was like, there was just something that felt right about it. And I liked that side of things. I liked editing. I liked getting things in Photoshop. Photoshop was a really big love for me because I'd learned how to use Photoshop even before doing photography. And for that, I was doing painting, drawing, and doing graphics and things like that in there beforehand. So it was a nice transition to move into something where I was editing a photograph and I was making it whatever I wanted it to be. I think that was the most fun part of it, was that photography is just so creative. You can literally make something out of nothing. And yeah, I love that.
So in terms of the gear, because look, at 15, I know when I first started, I had no idea what camera to buy. I literally bought like a kit, an entire kit with a kit lens, a regular camera with a kit lens. So how did you figure out kind of the equipment side of photography? Because it can be very confusing.
It is. And honestly, at the time, I was going purely off like what other people I knew and who I looked up to were using. I didn't really know much about the technical side at all. And even to this day, I still couldn't rattle off like every single technical piece of a camera. Like I definitely don't feel like I'm super uh, knowledgeable on that side of things at times. But even when I was like 15, I think and quite often sometimes I know we talk about and everyone like jokes about like how many times you get asked like what camera do you use, what lens do you use, it's like the common camera question, but I think back to when I was that age and I was like starting out, and I do remember just wanting to know what camera people were using because I needed guidance in which direction to go with things, and if I liked someone's work, then I really wanted to know what gear they were using because I looked up to them specifically. But the first time I ever upgraded to an SLR camera, I had like a point and shoot, like a tiny little point and shoot for the first year or so I was doing photography. And then I upgraded to the Canon 400D. And I remember realizing on the first day I got that camera, I thought it was going to because I was doing a lot of self-portraits as well. And I thought it was going to make me look like really beautiful or something, or really crazy, or like, I don't know. I thought that it was going to make all the difference in my photos. And I realized the first time I ever did some self-portraits with it, that it actually did not make a difference at all in that sense. It was just like more megapixels, and it was like
it's just like a not a good picture, even bigger. You're like, I know. I'm going back to the point and shoot. Where's the point and shoot?
Literally, I was like, wait, I spent like $1,000 on this camera and it didn't make me look any better. And that was when I realized that it's not always the gear that's going to make your work more creative. It's not going to make the concept any different. It's not going to make you look more beautiful or anything like that. You obviously you have your limitations with a point and shoot and with other camera gear, but yeah, it's not always about the gear. That's the day I found that out.
We learned this just through lots of money spent. That's what I'll say. It's like we buy the newest stuff thinking that my photography is gonna start looking the way I want it to. And it just never comes to fruition.
No,
it never gets there. I think we always like focus on the wrong things. Like I don't know about you, but for me, like lighting was a big thing. I know you work so closely with lighting now because you do a lot of beauty macro shots, which by the way, I'm super intimidated by because they're so
my gosh.
Close. I don't know how you do it.
I honestly feel this, like I felt the same way when I started doing it a few years ago because studio was not my forte at all. I had always been natural light, as you know. It was where I felt comfortable. Yeah, and I loved natural light because I still, even to this day, I still feel that natural light, there's really nothing that beats good natural light. Just the mood that it will give a photograph to, I think is incredible. But yeah, studio was always very intimidating to me. I always thought that I needed the most expensive studio equipment as well. And that was such a roadblock to me getting in and experimenting. But then I think I found out that I actually didn't need to spend too much on studio lighting, and you can get with one light setups. Like I would say probably 80% of my work at times with beauty is one light setups, maybe two. And that's kind of like, that's enough. And you can always build up from that, but I think it's just important to remember sometimes that you don't always have to go for the most expensive equipment, and that shouldn't be like a roadblock to entry into doing what you always want to do. And yeah, it takes a while to learn that though.
So no 10 light setups.
Oh my God, no.
Trucks with the lights, they're unloading all the lights for you. No, none of that.
I wish I could be that technically minded and to really think of light in that way. But sometimes for me, it comes down to simplicity too. And I like simple lighting setups. Sometimes I feel like sometimes a 1 or 2 light setup can be just as amazing as a 10 light setup. But, then again, there's photographers out there that can do incredible lighting setups with, 10 to 20 lights or whatever. And everyone's different. Everyone's different in how they like to shoot.
The thing with that is they have people set up those lights. So
yes, yeah.
The thing, and photographers who are just starting out compare themselves to these professional photos with this huge production team. Little do they know, like 50 people set this entire thing up.
100%. And I only realized, like, even going back like a few years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I started to realize how many photographers were having like technical assistants on board that were actually there for like the electronics and the technical side of things. And not just for, putting a light here or there. It was from scratch, setting up the whole setup. Like they would have the discussion beforehand and have 3 people on board for assisting. And like, I've never really, I guess, especially doing beauty photography, I've never really had to have 3 people on board for assisting yet. So that was wild to me, but it totally makes sense now how some of these huge campaigns and how photographers do those, they would need that kind of help, because I've even had some shoots where you do find it very difficult as a one person show kind of to get everything going. It's difficult.
So we have some technical difficulty right after me and Kaylee just talked about all the technicalities of photography. If only you had 3 assistants, right? To come in and fix, right? Where's your 3 assistants? I don't even know 3 people. I do. Okay, I do know 3 people. Let's see.
Okay.
Oh, now it works.
Okay. We're good. Yeah, I live by the whole saying, if something's not working, you just turn it off and turn it back on again. Just unplug and plug back in, and it works. So that's good for me.
Okay, guys, Kaylee's back in action. You know what I love? You know what I absolutely love? The fact that we're photographers, but we have the hardest time with lighting audio for our YouTube videos.
Just like and you know what? There's a part of me that feels so bad for people watching my videos sometimes, because I'm like, this does not show my skill as a photographer in any sort of sense whatsoever. But yeah, there's just so much going on. It's hard to sometimes explain to people as well that you have so much going on in the background, like with trying to improve your own work, for example, not only your own videos, but your own work. And trying to improve your retouching, trying to organize shoots, doing paid jobs, doing courses, doing your YouTube videos, and then editing the YouTube videos. And like, there's just so much that goes on in the background that people just don't see. And they're like, why can't you just get good audio? Why can't you just have good lighting? And even like for us, like for me, I live at home at the moment. I'm saving for a house. So I can only sort of film in certain areas of my house at certain times of day. And when I get that opportunity, I'm like, I'm in there. I'm like filming, especially for YouTube, because it's such a huge part of what I'm doing these days. Like it is for you, obviously. And yeah, sometimes you just need to get things done. Even if it's not 100%, if it's at 80%, well, then it's got to go out.
Us with our bad lighting, you guys, we promise we know how to use light outside of this and the microphone. Actually, no, audio was the biggest thing for me.
Oh my gosh. Like the amount of comments, like still to this day, like people are like, why don't you? Like people still ask me like, are you using a microphone? And I'm like, yeah. Like, is there something wrong with it?
We gotta talk to some videographers on YouTube.
Oh man, like it's become a bit of a meme, I think, for me on my channel. Like the audio is just like, no matter what I do, the audio is just like never gonna be perfect. But you know what? I'm trying. I'm trying different things, trying different microphones. I'm upgrading as it, allows for me to do so. And yeah, hopefully one day I'll get really good audio.
I'm there to help you. Because I also was struggling with that. Speaking of struggles, when you first started photography, what was the biggest struggle that you can remember?
Oh, I'm going to go ahead and say earning money. Because I thought that being a fashion photographer and just meant that I could be, creative and just have a creative job and just go out and earn the big bucks, because I'd heard, like a lot of fashion photographers were earning a lot of money and getting big campaigns, and that was just what you did. And I just thought it was that simple. And let me tell you, and to everyone listening, it is not that simple. And it took a lot of years for me to actually get to a point where I was earning enough money from everything that I was doing to become a full-time photographer or a full-time freelancer. And still to this day, I think if I was relying solely on fashion shoots, especially being in Australia where there's not a huge market for fashion photography, there is a market there, but you have to really be pushing to stay within that and to be earning consistently. But if I was just relying on photo shoots alone these days, I think I would still have to work another job. I think that there's so much merit in having more than one income stream these days, and to diversify your income and to try and fit as many different streams into your photography business as you can. So that's that was the one roadblock that I found early on, though. And one thing that I struggled with was earning money and starting out to earn money, because there's no like clear cut way for fashion photographers to be like, this is what you're meant to do. You just kind of like wing it.
Honestly, you're so right, because you see these photographers doing these big editorials, all these big jobs, and you're like, how do they do it? No
Yes.
one knows. It's like
Yeah.
no one talks
It's
about
unspoken.
it. It's unspoken.
And then people do editorials and things like that. And I used to think, oh, well, I would love to get my work published in a magazine, or I'd love to shoot for this magazine and earn $1 million doing that. But people don't even earn a lot from doing editorials these days. This is one thing that I think a lot of people think that you earn money from quite consistently. And unfortunately, magazines a lot of the time don't have a very big budget, or if any. And it's more sort of shooting for the love of it, more so than necessarily earning a lot of money out of it. Yeah, so it's not actually the editorial side of things that you do earn the money off a lot of the time. It's the commercial and advertising side of things. And that's one thing that I found really hard to get into and to wrap my head around early on.
It is important to note that a lot of photographers don't get paid to do editorials, and you got to pay your bills. So
Yep.
yeah, it's okay to do the magazine editorials if that's what you want, which, by the way, I think it's ridiculous they don't have a budget for photography. Like, your whole magazine is photography and you don't have budget for that. Then what do you have budget for?
Yeah, you're
What are you
literally an
budgeting?
advertising magazine. Yeah.
All I see is pictures. That's what we provide you guys with. The content that it makes up the magazine is photography. So I just think it's
100%.
absolutely crazy they can't make a budget. I know that you've shot for magazines. Talk to us about your experiences with that. Did you reach out to the magazine? Did they reach out to you? How did that work?
Yeah, so most of the time it's been like submission based, or I think there's probably been one time where I've actually been approached, like someone's actually directly contacted me via email. But for the most part, it's been submission based, and then you submit your ideas or you submit your editorial that you've already done. And it has to be kind of like you haven't posted it anywhere else. It has to be exclusive to that magazine that you're submitting to. But I must admit, as of recent years, I've definitely laid off sort of doing as much magazine editorials and doing as many submissions. I would like to start doing that again, because I think that that's the more creative side of photography coming into it. And I still want to reach out on that side. But then there's also the pull of obviously making money and making sure you're staying afloat and you're earning enough to have a living and all the rest of it. So it is a very hard balance to have both sometimes.
I know that you got an agent though. Did you prefer having the agent, or did you prefer kind of working on your own?
Yeah. So like my photography agent, she is pretty incredible. I actually have two. I've got Sarah and Simone with my agency, and those guys are amazing. Like for me, I was never a huge business person in terms of the back end of the business and getting things done there. I always found it very hard to dedicate my time to that side of things, and things would always go by the wayside, or I'd forget certain things. And I really hated, I guess, that organization of the back end. I love organizing my business and I love the business side of things, but I also just feel like there's certain things that I wanted someone else to take care of for me. And when my agency had approached me for an interview and to come in and have a look at my work and to sign me, I felt like that was the right time for that to happen as well, because I just started working full time as a photographer, and I felt that was very overwhelming, that side of things. So for them, like I've really enjoyed having agents on my side, because they really do have my back when things go wrong, or if things are not going the way as planned. They really have my back, and they always have. And it's been a few years now that I've been with this agency. So I personally love having agents, but there may be particular photographers out there that don't want to have an agent or would thrive without an agent. And I think that they would be the first people to say that as well. My agents would be the first people to be like, not everyone, this isn't for everyone. And just because you have an agent doesn't mean that you're going to get a lot of jobs, or it doesn't mean that you're going to, all of a sudden start making millions of dollars. Like, it doesn't work that way. And I've always had that impression with my agents as well, that I have to do the work. Like and at the end of the day, you as the photographer has to do the work. You have to be producing content. You have to have that side of things done before your agent can even help pitch you out or to help you with business side of things as well. They're not just going to go and get you jobs and that's that. Like, there has to be so much effort from your part as well.
How long were you doing photography up until you started working with those agents? And did they reach out to you? Did they email you? And because they found
Yes.
you, right?
Yeah, they did. So I had been probably, oh my gosh, since I started photography, if we're sort of talking 2007, it was about 2018, the beginning of 2018 when they reached out to me. So yeah, you're looking at probably just over 10 years of doing photography on the side with other jobs that I had been doing. But when they reached out to me, it was, I think it was actually beginning of 2019. So it was two
All the
years.
years kind of just blend together at
They
this
really
point,
do.
girl.
So it was, oh my God, like it's hard to think of like what the last few years even was. It was so busy. But yeah, they reached out to me. So I'd been living in Melbourne and they had seen my work. I'd been doing a lot of testing and getting out in the community, doing a lot of collaborations with makeup artists, models, everyone in the industry. And they had seen me through that. They'd been watching me for a little while. And then that's when they actually reached out to me to see if I wanted to photograph any of the girls through their agency because they have a model division and a creative division. So I said yes. There was a few girls I was interested in doing some test shoots with. And yeah, so after I did the test shoots, Sarah was basically like, love the images and would love to talk about representation if you're interested. So that was when I got called in for the meeting, and that was very exciting for me because I was like, this was one of my life goals, was to have like an agent, and yeah, that had happened, and until this point it's been really great so far. So yeah, it was a nice moment.
I know, I was so proud of you. I'm still so proud of you and how far you've come. You guys have to check out Kaylee's work, by the way. She's incredible. We're gonna get all about we're gonna talk about your work in a second. But before that, in working with agents, what is the biggest difference that you've seen versus being a freelancer and not being represented?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that stands out above all the rest with my agency in particular, because they have, like I said, the model division and the creative division, they are in contact with a lot of different brands and people on a regular basis. And they have already built up relationships with all of these different brands. So they can easily pitch my work out as long as I'm creating the portfolio that's needed. I'm creating the work that's needed to pitch out. They can contact these people easily enough and really send them my work directly. And it's like kind of going in through a back door into different jobs, really, because if you were by yourself and you were having to do this, it takes a while. It takes a while to find the right contacts to really get to those people that you need to get to with your work and to get your work in front of them. Whereas having an agent sometimes is a bit like a shortcut. They can kind of do that for you and they're used to it too. They're not going to fumble over their words or fumble over certain things that you would probably do yourself if you're like me and you're very frightened of those situations, getting into confronting situations or getting in situations where you have to show people your work and you're very exposed. It's nice to have that little bit of a barrier there of a professional doing it on your behalf, and they're only going to do the best for you, or a good agent will only ever do what's best for you and what's best for your career. So that's probably the best thing about having my agent there.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice to be represented by someone to handle the things that aren't the funnest, like contracts that you ever had to read through, like a 10-page contract. Like, don't want to even look at it, but you have to. But
Absolutely.
you have an agent there, they can kind of look it
Yes.
over, take things out, and be like, no, my client doesn't want this. I think
Yes.
that's probably the main thing that would entice a photographer to be with an agent. So it's really interesting because you did
Absolutely.
photography for so long without an agent. So you
Yes.
have so much experience in that respect. And then now
Yes.
and by the way, I have to say, like, your work stood on its own. So even with the agent, like, it just kind of amplified that,
Oh, thanks. Oh, that's so,
Seriously.
but like,
I just
yeah,
want to
it
say,
was, it
I
was
don't know.
difficult. Like, I mean, having an agent at first was like such a new experience, but it was something for me. Like, I'm not a fan of confrontation. I don't like getting into the hard situations where you're chasing money. That was a really tough thing for me when I found myself going out on my own and doing things full time. And then I found that people weren't paying me on time and I was having to chase people and, getting deposits from people and doing that front end work where you're speaking to clients directly and you're having to do all of this stuff that doesn't come naturally to you and you don't enjoy. It is very anxiety ridden. I found that that was very hard, especially when it was my full-time income. And if I wasn't getting paid on time, and if I wasn't able to negotiate a deal properly, then that was really affecting my mental health too, because it's hard being someone that's got to do it all by yourself. And I think if you're not that great with negotiation, like I wouldn't say I'm very good with negotiation, but my agent is, then that's great. Like she can do that side of things for me and hopefully get me a better deal on certain jobs, and then everyone's happy.
I feel like we're the same. Like we take the first offer. They're like, okay, we want to give you $5 for 15 editorials. I'm like, done.
I'll take it.
Amazing. Can we do $4 actually? I don't think I'm worth that much. Yeah. Just do 4.
Sometimes like my agent will come through with what they've said their budget is. And then I'll be like, oh, okay, that sounds good. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna add on more though. And I'm like,
we're gonna add $10,000 more dollars.
You like, I think it's worth more than that. So, it's great that she's being honest and she feels like, she can do that for me. And I'm like, okay, you do that.
This is why we just can't survive with, I don't know. Like,
I know. It's like, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, Kaylee, you run your own business. Like it's been years. You need to get used to doing certain things. But sometimes, like I said, just depending on your personality and who you are as a person, like certain things just don't come naturally. And confrontation is just not one of those things for me that I like. I don't really like it. So it's just unfortunate, but it is a big part of owning your own business. Unfortunately, you do have those circumstances, but it's just not my thing.
The bottom line is that a lot of the time we don't know what to charge. No, we don't know if it's even like they can offer you $1,000 and you can be like, oh my God. I mean, it is a lot of money, but then compared to the scope of the project, you could be charging 50 times that amount, but you don't even 100%. Know.
And they might have gotten a quote from another photographer or something that would have charged them 3 times as much, and you wouldn't even known. Like you would have just been like, yeah, sure, I'll do that for that price. So that's definitely something that comes with time, and you start to realize over time what your worth is and what your work is worth and what you should be charging as opposed to maybe what some people's budgets are. But I understand there's times where you do need to fit within certain clients' budgets as well. It's finding that balance.
You ever get a client that gives you the lowest budget and you're just like, are you like, this is a game to you, isn't it?
Yes. And like short answer is yes. And that happens unfortunately more often than not.
God, like what do they have a budget for? If you're not paying the photographer, what are you, but you're paying for the food, but you're paying for the studio space.
And you're paying for the model. And that's the thing. Like a lot of agencies will charge like big dollars for the models. And, in certain cases, rightly so. But then you can't sort of pick and choose who you want to pay. Because then a lot of the time I've been on shoots where sometimes I've been paid, the model's been paid, and then the makeup artist hasn't been paid. And it's just so wrong. It's so wrong. And I can't believe that there's so many clients out there that pick and choose who they want to pay and keep it on the down low from certain team members that they're not being paid or that everyone else is. So I think it's just incredibly wrong when that happens.
I did a project once and they were paying me, the brand was paying me, but wasn't paying the model. I took money from what I was paid from the brand and I paid her. And I'm like, absolutely. Yep. You can't tell me that she's going to work for free, but pay me.
Yes. I've done that before on certain occasions where the makeup artist hasn't been paid. Then I've taken a small amount out of my pay or like halved it or whatever I've needed to do to make sure that everyone on the team has some sort of compensation, whether it's been for image licensing, whether it's been for, whatever it is. And it's frustrating to know that sometimes the brand will have a budget for you, or they have it for the model, but they don't have it for any other team members. And it's so wrong. It's something that you come across so often in the industry, and like it needs to change very, very soon.
The issue is that we don't talk about what we get paid, but you know what? I recently met people who would tell me how much they get paid. And I actually appreciated that so much because then I had something to compare to. I was like, oh, they're totally lowballing me.
Yes. It's hard because it feels like this closed-lipped thing in the photography community as well. Like with a lot of photographers, they are very closed-lipped on what they charge. And to an extent, I can definitely understand because I feel like, and I've written like an ebook on this where I've talked about pricing your photography. And even for myself during that ebook and writing it, I don't feel like I've written down exact figures because it's very hard depending on where you live, like in the location that you're living, in the country that you are, depending on which brand you're shooting with, whether it's a small brand or whether it's a very big brand. Depending on how large the shoot is, how long you're going to be there on the day, how much retouching, there's so many variables and how it's going to determine how much you charge for a shoot. But I think sometimes it's nice to be able to find out what people even on your level or what you feel or who you feel are on your level as photographers charge, because it's a starting point. And if someone asked me how much I was going to charge for a certain job or for a particular job, I would have no problem saying exactly how much I would charge for that job, because I don't feel like there should be anything secret about that in necessarily. Like I'd be happy to give them an exact figure on a specific job, and tell photographers how much I would charge in that sense. But obviously, generally just speaking, how much would you charge for a fashion shoot? That's a very hard question to answer because there's so many variables that come into it. But, I have like a day rate and half day rate and things like that I could start from. So, but it is hard. It feels like it's a very secret thing and like people don't want to talk about how much they earn, but I get it and I don't get it at the same time.
It's like Fight Club, like rule number one of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club.
No one talks about photography prices.
A lot of people tell me that they get these emails from brands asking them, oh, how much would you charge for an editorial or for a client shoot for like 9 hours? And then people ask me and I'm like, I have no idea. I wish I could tell you, but like you said, so many variables. It's so different for every person and different countries. It differs as well, the price ranges. So you said you have a pricing. You said you have a pricing PDF. I'm going to have that link down below so people can check it out. I think that'd be super helpful. What made you want to make that?
It's actually because of this, because I was getting so many questions about pricing and I was just like, I need some sort of all-encompassing guide to do this, so people will easily be able to read through it and use some of the variables that I talk about and then sort of piece together their pricing system from that. Because like I said, it's so hard to answer that question when people are like, how much would you charge for this fashion shoot? I'd be like, okay, well, how much retouching? How many images do they want? How long am I going to be there shooting on the day? How long would they want me for? There's just so many different things that you need to pick into that. And I think that one thing that I've come to learn over the years is you need to charge for your time. So retouching has been a really big part of my pricing as well. I've always had that separately to my half day and full day rate. And then you've also got usage on top of all that. So usage is another commercial term for pricing, and that's very confusing for people. So I've talked a bit about that in the PDF as well, and how you would sort of start to figure out what negotiation and usage would look like, as well as a fee on top of that. But yeah, within this PDF, I talk about like basically from scratch, like when you might feel ready to start charging, because that's another big question that people have is like, when do I actually start charging? And for a lot of people, you're winging it. Again, you don't know when the right time is, but I talk about, a few signs that might maybe let you in on when you feel like you should be ready to start. And one of those signs would be if people have already asked you what your rates are or how much you charge for a shoot, then that's kind of a good indication that you might be ready to start charging for your work. So yeah, it goes from start to finish of really what you should be looking at, how much you want to earn in a year. That's going to also depend on how much you want to charge, because realistically, if you're looking at how much you need to earn to cover your expenses and to cover your living wages as well, you need to factor that in. And for everyone, that's going to be different. So once again, there's just so many things to consider.
The usage part, it got me triggered. I'm not going to lie, because usage is my worst nightmare. Licensing, my worst nightmare. All of it is my worst nightmare. Pricing in general is, like you said, kind of, it's difficult, but I love the fact that you're going over all these things. And I love the fact that you said one good way to know that you should start charging is when people ask you.
Yes. Because that's one of the main reasons I started charging for my work, is that someone actually asked me and they were like, how much do you charge for a wedding? And someone else was asking me, how much do I charge for a model portfolio? And I was like, well, you know what? I never really thought about that. So I'm going to have to start thinking about how much I would charge. But even if I told people, it's crazy, because even if I told certain people now how much I was charging back then when I first started, that was 10 years ago. So, or over 10 years ago when I first started charging. So you're basically looking at a totally different time, totally different year frame of when I was charging. So things are going to be worth probably a lot more now than what they were back then. And I'm in a different location. I was still a student at the time. Like, there's just so many things that you have to consider. And I think that's really difficult and why it's so hard for people to figure that out when they're first starting out. But usage, man, like I can't even, like, even to this day, there's still things under that when you're looking at whether it's exclusive or non-exclusive or worldwide, certain countries or only one country, and for your length of time that it's going to be used for. Like, there's so many things, so many things.
You know what's interesting? I know of a photographer who is like super famous online, lots of Instagram followers, Facebook followers. He gets so many likes. My friend was going to do pictures with him when she went to Lebanon, and she's like, "Oh my God, he doesn't charge, he hardly charges anything." I'm like, "What?" I thought he was going to charge thousands of dollars, but turns out he was charging like $300, $400 for an engagement session. And that's the thing. It's so different from country to country, because in Lebanon, maybe they're not willing. Well, I am Lebanese, but I don't live there. I don't know the price points over there, how much creatives really charge, but it's different varying from country to country versus in California, they'd be charging thousands upon thousands of dollars because the market is so crazy for weddings.
New York too, like it'd be so different even to living here, because like your cost of living too, depending on which country you live in, is going to be so different. I mean, I could buy, bread for maybe $1 in one country, and then over here it's going to be like $3.50. So there's so many things like that you have to factor in with your cost of living too. And most people don't really look at their own expenses a lot of the time when they're looking at their pricing. They're like, okay, well, this person's charging this much, so I'll just charge that, which it's good to know for a starting point what other people are charging. But then factoring in your own costs, looking at how much you realistically can or want to earn in a year too is another thing. So if you have your targets as well for each year, which I do have targets that I like to try and aim for every month, because I think that keeps me on track as well. Like with owning my own business, like I always like to know that I'm going to earn enough and I can earn, obviously a little bit more each year. Is nice to know that your business is growing in that way. So I think that's another important thing to factor in, is just, all the extras that you don't always think about.
I know I don't think about I didn't think about that stuff in the beginning. I'm just like, $100, sure. Why not? I can't even, that doesn't even cover my internet. I'm like,
yeah, I know. I think I probably did like $30 photo shoots at the beginning, which that was massively undercutting people in my area. And thinking back on it now, I'm like, please, no one charge $30 for a photo shoot. I don't care if you're a student or what. I mean, you know what? Some countries might charge $30. I don't know. But, for where I was living at the time, I realize now that I probably was undercutting. And undercutting is another massive issue, because you don't want to bring down everyone else's salaries either. You don't want to sort of bring down the industry to a point where you're just making everything cheaper, and then you're getting clients who don't appreciate your work necessarily. They just want to get the best deal. So that's another thing.
It's good to vet your clients and see if you guys work well together. You have a good, like, a line of communication, because I don't know about you, but I've come across clients where I'm like, you know what, maybe I'm not who they're looking for. And I think it's important to not accept every single, I mean, when you're first starting out, I took everybody. I'm like, let's not even play games here. I took every client that came to me. But now in my career, it's been like 10 years later, I say no, like, hey, I don't think I fit this project. And I think that's totally fine. And people should turn down things if they are able to, if, like I said, if you have that ability to do so. Obviously, we know that it's hard times right now. Like, not everyone can turn down a job. I was in that same boat, but when you come to a point in your career where you're doing weddings and you get to pick and choose because you've done so many, then it becomes important to pick your clients based on, hey, do I fulfill their needs in terms of my style? And have you had any like crazy client requests where you're like, I don't even do this?
Yeah, I mean, like, plenty of them. But like what you just said was so right. Like everything that you just said was so true. And I think like the times that I've had like weird requests and things happen in previous years, like you said, when you're first starting out, you just take everything. You do everything. You do family shoots, you do weddings, you do everything to make the living possible, I guess, and to build up your experience in different fields until you really feel like you've found what you want to do as well. But like, this is actually where I was talking about different income streams. I think this is where it comes into it and makes things so much easier for photographers in this day and age. If you can have other things going on in your business where you're getting passive income and you're not having to focus on doing all of these other genres or all of these other shoots for clients that you don't want to work for or you don't want to have anything to do with really, then you can pick and choose what you want to do, and you don't have to always be creatively limited in that sense. Like for you with YouTube, that allows you to not only have passive income, but it allows you to have such a wider thing of things that you're doing in your business, and it allows you to do the fashion jobs that you want to do. And then if things come along that you just don't have any interest in, you can absolutely say no. And a lot of photographers who are just focusing on photo shoots and that's it, and no other, things like retouching or any other extras that they could be doing, that's hard for them because they feel like they need to take on all these other clients that they don't want to take on. But yeah, I think what you said,
right. But you do like very professional retouching, and I want to ask you about that because you do dodge and burn, which to me, God bless you, because I struggle with that so much. I'm on frequency separation still. Did you start on frequency separation, or
yes.
Did you just straight out the gate dodge and burn?
No. No, I definitely did frequency separation. And I do believe it was you that got me onto frequency separation going back like 2013, maybe.
Me?
I think it was you. It was you, because before that I was just retouching on another layer and just doing the patch tool and all the rest of it. So,
you did not use the patch tool. Oh my God. That's bringing back some good memories. I love it. I love it so much.
Oh my God. The memories of Photoshop, like just starting out,
did you retouch on just one layer and just the same layer?
Yeah. The first, like when I first started in Photoshop, that was what I used to do. And I would just I would even do Gaussian blur. I would do Gaussian blur a lot. Like I'd select the skin. Yeah, I know. It's like a mortal sin.
I love it. I miss those times. I'm not going to lie.
Or smudge tool. Like I used to use the smudge tool and just like, yeah, that looks good. There's no texture left. That looks good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like 10% Gaussian blur, 100% Gaussian blur. Yeah. Looks great.
Yes. That was basically it. That was my editing technique back then. But like, then as I went along, then I found frequency separation through you. And then I started to do dodge and burn. I think when I was probably, it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago now, I started to do it more and more. And I found that was great for beauty and up close stuff. That's really good, but it is very time consuming. And I probably wouldn't recommend doing that for every photo because that's going to take a long time.
I don't even know how you do it for one picture, but I want to learn. I was like, maybe I should take Kaylee's course, because if you guys don't know, Kaylee has a retouching course, which may I say is amazing. I'm gonna have all those links down below because these are great resources.
Thanks, girl.
what gave you the idea of doing a retouching course? Like, what got you into teaching?
Yeah, so I guess I just loved doing YouTube a lot as well. Like from when you got me into it, 2014 or 2015, whenever that was. And from there, I just really enjoyed the educating part of things. And I'd actually been in contact with another photographer, Olivia Bossett, and she was doing a couple of courses. And I sort of consulted with her. I was like, I'm thinking about doing this course. And this was actually just before coronavirus came into effect too. So it was kind of lucky that I'd considered this over doing the physical workshops because I'd always wanted to do those. But then I was like, maybe I should just start out with something online that I can kind of really work on and develop. And so that was kind of what got me into doing the online course through Teachable. And yeah, it's great. I actually love the platform and I love doing online learning. Like I know you've done a few through Skillshare and things like that as well. Like, how do you find it? Because I find it really nice because it's just like another aspect to my business that I can do. And it's like another little outlet and to communicate with people.
Yeah, I love teaching. I love meeting people and helping people because I feel like when we first started, there weren't a lot of resources like there are now. It's crazy. They literally have websites dedicated just to learning things from creators. We didn't have that when I feel like we're like, I'm talking back in like the Stone Age, but it was
I know, it was only probably 10 years ago.
I'm being dramatic.
No, but it's so true because like even looking back then, I think specifically for fashion, because there was a lot for other types of photography for weddings and travel and things like that. But talking about fashion, like I think Creative Live was one that was a big one, and Kelby Learning and stuff. That was the two that I remember being sort of around the time where I was in college and doing my course, but not much online. Like YouTube hadn't really had much for fashion photographers. Like I think for you, when you started that, like going back to 2013, I think it was, or around that time, like there wasn't much at all. And you kind of like paved the way for all these photographers to come in and like really share their work and share the educational side of things. And it's been so great, like ever since, because I'm sure people have learned so much from getting onto YouTube, and it's free content too. It's incredible.
And well, first of all, thank you. I love you. You're so sweet. I don't see myself like that at all. A lot of my first videos were just like editing stuff. Cause just like you, I loved editing in Photoshop. Like Photoshop was my favorite. I used everything, graphic design, photo
because
manipulation.
You used to be a graphic designer. I remember you when you were working full time, you were working and doing the graphic design thing. And then you were like, no, I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to be the photographer that I want to be.
Because I got laid off. Wait, you remember? I don't know if you remember, but I basically got laid off, and I wasn't sure if I should like still be there. But I had like so many loans, and I couldn't like afford to leave. But then I got laid off, so I'm like, geez, I guess I have to go now.
Got to do it now.
I have no choice.
I remember you being like so I guess frightened at that time, because it is such a risk when you're leaving that consistent income, and that's what's so scary for so many people. But you had that time where you just kind of had to do it anyway. So I think for you, that was such a big leap, but you did it. And look at where you are now. Like, imagine if you hadn't done that, if you just been like, oh, well, I'll just go into another full-time job and I'll just, do photography on the side. It changed your life, basically. Like, you can definitely look back on that moment now and go, well, thank God I kind of got laid off. And that was like everything happens for a reason. I think that's probably one of those moments, right?
The universe just came together. But you know what the best part about the journey has been? That you've been consistent in my life, and you've been such a good friend, and we go on trips together. And
girl, like it's been like for both of us, I think, like from that point. And I remember like we would have messages together like 10 years ago, like on Facebook, and we'd be like, why can't we just do what we want to do and like travel and like meet up and like we've done that.
And we eventually did. We made that happen in Korea.
Oh my God. And like to look back on that now and be like, the first time we met was actually in Korea, and all we wanted to do was like travel to Japan together, guys. Like, this is what we talked about for years. We were like, we need to go to Japan. We need to like go to Harajuku. We need to like do the things together. And then we actually did like twice, which is crazy.
That's why you're a real one. That's why you're a real one. We should drink at the same time.
I know, we should.
Twins.
Absolutely.
Wait, okay. I'm going to be a terrible friend for asking you this.
Okay.
Well, I never paid attention. What's your zodiac sign?
Oh, Taurus.
Okay, cool.
Why?
I don't know if that's supposed to. I haven't gotten that far down the rabbit hole, but I know mine.
No, wait, what's yours is let me guess, because yours in September. Are you a Libra?
Yes.
Oh, that was a good guess. Ooh,
I was gonna say I only know about mine. I don't know about. Tell me about yours.
I don't even know that much about mine. All I know is like when I read my zodiac, I'm like, yeah, that's me.
That's accurate. They wrote that with me in mind.
I know. Like maybe it's just because I don't know. Maybe it's all bullshit, but like I just look at it and I'm like, oh, that is me.
Whenever I was in LA working with the models, the first question they would ask me, what's your horoscope? Like it was like the
common knowledge.
Common knowledge. You just got to know about the horoscopes. And me, it was like my second time in LA working. It was my first time working with these professional models in LA. And I was like, oh, I'm a Libra. Like, I have no idea about any of this stuff. But I realized how much people were involved in this horoscope thing and rising moon. And I don't know. It's interesting to see what models like to talk about. I love it. I personally love it because I love to learn new things. And
I mean, and you've got to make conversation. You've got to like get a good vibe going on the day, and you don't want to be like that person's like, oh, that's so stupid. Like I don't believe in any of that sort of stuff. Like you want to like make it fun and have it as a talking point, you know? That's just what you got to
Yeah,
do.
we're not the photographers who just don't talk to our models the whole shoot, and then
Oh my God,
the model
no.
comes up in front of the softbox and we don't even talk to her.
I know. I used to be like, when I first started though, I was so shy. I was so freaking painfully shy when I was talking to models. Like, oh my God. And like anyone else in the creative team, I never knew what to say. Like, I don't know. That was just my personality though. I was just so shy when I was younger.
It's okay. I mean, it's hard to keep up a conversation for like 3 hours consistently, entertain
Oh,
everybody.
I am so exhausted at the end of shoots sometimes. I'm like, do you know when you've been talking like all day and you're just like, oh my God, like I need to go get some McDonald's and I need to like go home and sit on the couch and watch TV for like an hour or so because I'm just so like it's exhausting. It's if you're an introvert, usually like getting out there and doing a full day of shooting is
You
it's
just need to
exhausting.
recharge. You just go home and you don't talk to anybody
I
because you're
know, like
working.
that's literally it. I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk to anyone, but like living with your family, you always have to, and you just get in at the end of the day, and you're just like, okay, I'm gonna go to my room. Goodbye, everyone.
Talk to you guys
Any
in 2 weeks.
social.
2 weeks. Send me put a letter through the mailbox if you need me.
Yep, literally, literally.
It is
Oh my God.
hard to kind of manage photography being an introvert.
Yes, it is. I think I've done a video on this and like I had to because I was genuinely like there must be other people that struggle with this because it took me like 4 years to get up the courage to go and get a creative team together for a shoot. Like for the first 4 years I was doing photography, I just spoke to my friends and was like, do you want to do like a basic photo shoot or whatever, and like I just use them as my models or family and friends. And yeah, it took me years to actually get the courage to be like, okay, I'm gonna do a creative team thing now.
That's
Scary.
daunting too, because now you're inviting people into the photo shoot to collaborate, which by the way is great. But at the same time, for an introvert, you have to kind of socialize a lot more. You have to direct and you have to, and the worst part, that when the makeup artist is maybe putting on too much makeup, or there's like a look you don't like, or the hair too much hairspray, like you
Oh
have to be
yeah.
the one.
Then
You
you
have
have
to
to
be
be
the
the
one
one.
to break the news and be like, hey,
You have to address it and be like, can we maybe tone that down? Or so can we just remove that altogether? Or like do something completely different?
I hate
It's
being that person.
It's exactly what I talk about, like when I say confrontation. Like I hate that side of things, but like there is times where you just need to suck it up, and it's like, okay, if I don't do this now, if I don't make this decision now, I know these photos are not going to turn out the way that I want, and they may not be able to be usable in my portfolio. It's a very delicate balance between keeping everyone happy and letting everyone else have something for their portfolio, but also making sure that it's something that's going to be usable for yours.
When they start putting those fake lashes, I have to be like, okay, listen,
All
I
the
have to
fake.
tell you something. I'm sorry. Because the thing is, in some looks, it is cool. Like, I love
Yes.
being creative with the makeup, but I don't know about you, but I always start off my shoots with like a natural look and then we add in
Always.
makeup.
Always, always. And especially if you're working with certain models, like from agencies, a lot of agencies won't want you to do a crazy creative makeup look. They want natural. They may be okay if you've worked with them a lot before, and they might be a bit open to you doing different makeup looks. But I always like to start with something natural and then build it up, because it's so much easier to do a natural look first and then build it up and have extra photos that you don't have to send to the agency necessarily, because they may not be able to use them. But it's better to do it that way than starting off with a crazy look and then going into a natural look where you have to wipe everything off, and staining on the lips and all that sort of thing can happen. So yeah, that's usually what I do too.
It's hard to find a good team that doesn't take that stuff personally, that you get along
Yeah.
with, and that you can
Yeah,
be like, hey, so the lipstick, I don't really like
definitely.
that. Can you just change it up? And they're like, oh, sure,
Yeah.
like no problem. It's
And
really
and
hard to
as
find
you
a good team.
Yes, it's so true. And like as you get older and you get more experience with doing fashion and beauty, and this is something that I'm still learning every day about, like all the time, you learn what fashion actually is and what trends actually are and what is looking editorial and then what is looking more commercial, or what is looking a bit too event style or costume like. And it's really hard sometimes to talk to makeup artists maybe that don't have a lot of experience in those fields, that might be newer to that sort of thing that you're working with, and be like, okay, we need to make this a little bit more editorial. So I don't think that this kind of makeup look's going to be appropriate for this style of photo shoot. Or, you know, it's hard because they want to get something for their portfolio, but a lot of the time they're used to doing event looks for bridal, for other events and things like that, engagements, family shoots, things like that. And they're not used to doing editorial makeup, which is totally different to glamour. So it's hard to sort of like have that conversation sometimes and be like, I don't really know whether that's going to work for this particular look.
Because the agencies are not going to use that in the end. They never put those pictures with the red lips or whatever. I mean, sometimes they do, but very rarely. It's usually the natural, clean photos that
and skin
end up in the book.
Yeah. Like, do you find the foundation's like a massive thing for makeup artists? Because if that's too heavy, if that started off too heavy, then there's nothing you can do really in post you can do more with like a fresh thin layer of foundation on the face and help edit the skin and do more in post than if you can when it's thick and it's like almost like you can't do anything else on top. Like, yeah, it's kind of starts it off on the bad foot kind of thing.
My whole thing is I'd rather have the model not wear any makeup than wear heavy foundation, because it just doesn't match my aesthetic as a photographer. You can tell that she's wearing a lot. And the thing is, most of the models don't need that much makeup. I mean, you're trying to show their natural self. So why would you do? I just try to keep it as natural as possible. And I know some makeup artists want to add in cool looks to their book. And actually some have told me like, oh, what's the point of doing natural makeup? It doesn't look like she's wearing anything. It doesn't look like I've done anything. But I'm like, no, you did such a good job. Yeah, that's what makes you a really good makeup artist, is because you're able to make it look like she's not wearing anything.
100%. If you are able to do that as a makeup artist, that actually that's a huge thing, because a lot of makeup artists can't really do that. They can't sort of give that impression of it looking like she's wearing or he's wearing no makeup. And like, you put too heavy foundation on the skin and then you've lost skin texture as well. So automatically when you're retouching later on, it just looks too blurred. It looks too perfect. And I think the great thing about fashion is it doesn't have to look perfect. It doesn't have to look really styled, super perfect makeup. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. It can be anything that you want it to be.
So when it comes to retouching skin, when you were learning dodge and burn, how long did it take you? You said it was 3 years. Was it like 3 or 4 years ago that you started learning it? And what was like the most difficult part about dodge and burn? Did you almost give up, by the way? I need to know this.
Yeah. So like the first few times I probably tried dodge and burn for the first time in around 2016. Because I did a beauty shoot back then and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give dodge and burn a try, because this is like something that a lot of professionals use and I've never really understood what is going on behind it. And I tried it and it took me like 3 hours to do my first image. And I was like, okay, so I've either got to find out a way to do this a little bit quicker, or I've got to find out ways when this is going to be appropriate for my work and maybe when it's not going to be. So it actually didn't take me that long to kind of really find the technique and master it a little bit more. I kept doing a lot of test shoots with beauty, and probably within a couple of months I felt like I was pretty comfortable with using dodge and burn. But it is tedious at times, and there are times where you're like editing photos. This is why I've really tried this year to focus on work that I want to shoot and that like is creative to me and something that I really want to do, not just for the sake of it. Because if you're shooting for the sake of it and then you're having to retouch and do dodge and burning afterwards, that's such a huge time process. And I don't want to waste my time sort of doing that if those images aren't even going to make it in my portfolio. So it's very selective with what I use dodge and burn for these days. But yeah, I love it as a tool.
I eventually, you inspired me to want to learn it. But
that's so
I've given up so many times, Kaylee. You have to support me. It's that frequency separation. But I want to use dodge and burn for like some photo shoots, like you do a lot of close-up beauty shots, so I feel like that's so necessary for what you do.
Yeah, for that sort of thing, it's pretty important, because there's things that, I mean, you can use a combination of things. You don't have to always use dodge and burn. You can use frequency separation, or you can use frequency separation and dodge and burn. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's no right or wrong way to retouch. I'm so happy for people to prove me wrong with certain things and do things in their own way and whatever feels comfortable to them. Like, I've always been pretty open to different techniques, and there will be those people out there that are like, no, you should do it this way. And I can totally understand in certain circumstances why people would use dodge and burn and why people would use frequency separation. It's all down to what you're more comfortable with using, what you feel more confident doing, and how you do it as well. Like you can achieve probably similar effects with both if you know how to control each process pretty well.
I just use that healing brush tool and the patch tool. Go back to the patch tool.
You know what? They do pretty cool stuff. I mean,
they work really well. Let's give the patch tool some recognition here.
And I mean, when you're doing weddings, I'm assuming you're not going to be sitting down doing frequency separation or dodge and burn for every single photo.
I would literally cry. I would cry. That's a lot of work. You helped me with the retouching for the weddings. I send them to you because I'm like, she's the pro. There's just so many. There's so many. Retouching is one of my favorite things to do, though.
Yes.
Speaking, look how I try to transition this into what I wanted to talk about earlier. Or actually, I also wanted to talk to you about this because you were there when my hard drive stopped working. That was such a traumatic experience for me. I cried for days.
It was traumatic from a person looking into your life at that point. It was like, oh my God, like it was so hard like that time because like there was nothing we could do. Like it had happened and you were in a totally different country when it happened. Oh my God, you'll have to just tell the story because I mean, I'm sure people have been through this before. Like it's everyone's worst nightmare, but like, yeah. I mean, that was rough.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because, well, first of all, I had that experience with you. So you were actually there to kind of experience it with me going through that, which brings me to, I believe you told me that something similar happened to you where you deleted files unexpectedly on accident.
Yeah.
How is this happening to us? What's going on here?
I mean, it's really sad for me to admit this because at least with you, it was like, it really wasn't your fault. Like something had happened, like the hard drive had been knocked in transit or whatever on your way over, like who knows what had happened there, but it wasn't necessarily your fault. For me, I just somehow deleted like a bunch of images off my computer, like my whole catalog of images off my computer straight away. Like I had accidentally, I think I'd selected I think it was like my photo shoots folder and by accident and I might have dragged it to the recycle bin or something had happened and I right clicked it and might have accidentally said delete and I was too quick with getting out of it because it came up with the notification like, are you sure you want to delete this permanently? Delete this because it's obviously too big to put into the recycle bin. And I accidentally pressed yes. I don't know how I did this. And then I was like, oh, it's okay. Oh, shit. I shouldn't swear. I'll say, and then I was like, oh my God, okay.
Say that. Girl, that's a moment that needs swearing. We need to express this emotion here. I would have said more than that.
Oh my God. So anyway, I was like, oh my God, how did this just happen? But then I was like, okay, it's fine. I'll just go undo. So I went up to go to undo. And that was blanked out. It wouldn't allow me to undo it. So then I had permanently deleted my whole photo shoots folder. And I hadn't backed up all of my work. It was only probably until maybe a couple of months ago. So I'd had months of photo shoots that had just been deleted. And I'd literally been on a trip recently to Melbourne where I'd done like 10 photo shoots. So they were on my hard drive, paid photo shoots as well as unpaid.
You never told me that.
Yes. So it was a big paid job that was on there and I freaked. I was so scared that I'd lost everything. And from that point, I was very lucky because some of my CF cards, some of my memory cards still had the photos from my shoots. So I could download some of those shoots and for quite a good portion of them, I was able to get the photos back, including the paid job, which thank God I didn't delete them off the memory card. Usually I don't delete them until I've backed them up. So that was one safety measure that I took. But yeah, some of my test shoots, a lot of my test shoots that I had done, and they were my new ones and I'd put so much effort into them and they were just gone. And I had to get a retrieval software. I believe it was called Recover. And I have used it before. And I was able to actually source some of the images off my memory card still that had been deleted, but because I hadn't formatted my cards recently, they were able to source a lot of the images from my shoot. So I was able to retrieve a lot of everything that I'd lost. And there really, in the end, wasn't much that I had lost. And it was so lucky that had happened the way that it did. Because if I hadn't had that option, then I would have been in the same circumstance, except I may not have had a hard drive that I could have got those images back off if that were the case. So I would have just been screwed.
That's why I don't format my cards. I'm like, let's just never format.
I just you know how the 5D Mark IV as well has like the 2 memory card slots, and a lot of cameras these days have that. Like I love that, because you know, if you can have both memory cards in there from the beginning that are shooting onto both cards, and you've got that backup already, that's going to save you so much heartache if something goes wrong.
People forget that, like, yeah, we take pictures, but we have to store thousands of files, and we run out of space. Like when we're not perfect and we forget things, and you know what? I hate the trash can, because even if I press yes, I want to delete, I should have the option of undeleting it.
I know,
right? It
right?
was like 10 minutes. So what if I change my mind?
And I don't even know how I did that. That was completely an accident. And I must have just had my fingers as well on the keyboard, because I sometimes use quick keys and things like that. And I just pressed enter thinking it was going to be no that was selected, but I instead selected yes to deleting him permanently. And that's really scary. And that sort of stuff happens all the time to photographers, and worse. Like, you know, like with your hard drive, if they hadn't been able to get that information back, but they did, thank God.
Oh my God, that was a whole experience.
It's so terrifying, and your heart just drops when that happens. It feels like part of your career has just been taken away from you. Like you've gone backwards, and you don't even, like, how do you even go to your clients from that point and be like, I'm so sorry, I've lost your wedding, or I've lost the job that I did when I traveled down, and you guys are going to have to either find another photographer or do it yourselves or get me down again. Like, and by that point, they won't want to hire me again. Like, you know, it was a really terrible, terrible mistake, but it has happened on more than one occasion. I had done that again once. I was like, when I was younger, I had deleted things by accident and my hard drive had stopped working. But yeah, it's a scary thought.
That is, I think I can speak for every photographer. Every photographer's worst nightmare to accidentally delete files or lose files before you deliver them to a client. That's why I got like 15 hard drives. That's why whenever I do a photo shoot, as soon as I get home, I back it up, I upload it. You know, I make sure that there's 2 backups of it. But it just gets hard. You need so much space. It's so expensive.
I
know. You gotta pay for storage, and then clients might take long to pick out their images, so you got to host the files. And it's not, here's the thing, it's not like 2 gigabytes. I'm talking like 50, 60 gigabytes for one event.
100%. And then you've got to, like, if you're working on the go with your laptop and you're wanting to retouch on the go, then you got to bring like 50 hard drives with you a lot of the time. Or like, I don't ever like actually having hard drives that are too big. It actually freaks me out a little bit, because I think the bigger that they are, and this is the same with my memory cards, the bigger that the cards are, the more content I have to lose, and the less, I guess, that it's spread across devices. So it might be a weird way of thinking, but I always like to have smaller hard drives, but more backups of those things, if that makes sense. So I'd rather have a 4 terabyte than like an 8 terabyte hard drive, where I can have so much on there and it's all going to get lost. And I don't know, it scares me if it were to corrupt or something were to go wrong, then we
got trust issues at this point.
I know I've always had trust issues with memory cards in particular, because I've had issues with those as well. So I always like to have like 16 or 32 gigabyte cards and then shoot on those as opposed to 64 or bigger.
But then in contrast, you got to pay attention and not lose more cards than normal. So we're playing a risky game either way. We're not safe, Kaylee.
It's still risk. It's just like, it is literally my brain. My brain's just like, you know what? If you do it this way, it's like your routine. It's your ritual. Just keep doing it this way and you should be fine. So
it's like, you know, that movie Saw? It's like, do you want to play a game? You're either going to do this or you're going to do this. Which are you going to choose? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea.
You're kind of screwed.
Just got to back up everything. What's like the most that you've shot in terms of the like gigabytes? What is the biggest
Like on a single
file?
shoot?
Yeah.
Or
We're talking like 100.
I'm trying to think actually, because like I would say like for a wedding, because I've done weddings in the past, like they'd probably be the biggest. Like 60 to 70 maybe, like
Oh
for
yeah.
wedding. Yeah, they were probably about that big because I would shoot raw as well, and that it does. It just like eats up so much space. So yeah, probably my weddings were the biggest, but now I tend to be like I used to be very like I would just shoot as much as I could on photo shoots. I would just click, I would just be like this. And I would take like 2,000 images per shoot and it would be crazy. But now I've kind of learned to be like, I think with beauty too, because there's only so much you can kind of get before you're like, yes, I have the shot. It slows you down a little bit and it's like, okay, I know I've got the shots, so I know I've got a few shots and we can move on and we can do the next look. And I'm not going to be wasting everyone's time just being like, yes, I'm going to click another 2,000 shots.
Yeah,
Of
you're
just saying,
right. It is more selective because yeah, I think that's super interesting. I've never really tried it. Maybe you
yeah.
can like show me around and like we could do a
Oh my
beauty
gosh,
shoot.
absolutely.
I've never
We
done
should
that
do
before.
we should do a like beauty photography shoot together or something because I feel like I would love to see what you could produce with beauty images because it would be just so different to what I do. I don't know, like I love seeing that. I love seeing comparisons between different photographers and like that's why I love your videos because they're so it really exposes how creatively different everyone is when it comes to photography and what people can produce.
When it comes to macro shots, though, I got to give it to you because those are so close. Every imperfection is going to show. So that retouching has to be on point. So
Dodgy
that's why
burn on
you're like
point.
you're like the queen of this genre right here. I don't
Oh,
think I could compare, to be honest. Like my
oh
retouch,
stop.
come on,
No.
be flyaways, be I don't know, random stuff in her, like a eyelash in her eyeball. I don't even know. Like that's how it would be. Like there's no comparison,
I
Kaylee.
mean, retouching becomes a very big part of beauty as well. Like, but I admittedly, I've tried to step back from doing too much retouching in like the last 6 months or so. I think because I've been doing a bit more natural light beauty as well, I've been like, okay, there's not as much room for a lot of heavy retouching with that sort of stuff because then it does start to look very unnatural. And I've kind of enjoyed just sort of like doing minimal retouching when possible and really just kind of getting rid of the strays, getting rid of any main blemishes, keeping freckles, keeping natural birthmarks or whatever it might be on someone's face. Yeah, I just kind of like that. I like showing people's natural beauty and making it look very natural, like it hasn't been retouched. Because at the end of the day, it's just like the little things like that you want to get rid of. But I don't see the point in changing someone's face completely or anything like that. I think that there's going too far with it, and sometimes I do think that even like looking through magazines and that it's clear to see where this stigma about retouching is coming from because some of those images are very retouched.
Yeah, they have the Instagram versus reality subreddit. I showed you it.
Yes, yeah,
They
yep,
people go too far with
yes,
that. But I'm not talking about the average person. Well, I am also talking about that, but we're talking about celebrities and the
mhm,
editorials. And I can appreciate it in our like through an artistic perspective, but I
yep,
do agree it contributes to a lot of the self-esteem issues a lot of people
yep,
have looking at those photos that are clearly retouched. And you know what's crazy? My sisters and my friends will ask me like, "Oh, is this picture retouched?" When to me it's clearly retouched. I can tell it's retouched,
yes. I know,
and they
and
won't
everyday
know.
person, yeah, would not be able to sort of say, oh, that's definitely retouched. They'd be like, oh wow, she's got great, such great skin, and like, how do they just achieve that? And it's so hard, especially working as like a commercial photographer too, and you're going by brand guidelines and what the clients are wanting you to do. And you're selling, especially with beauty, you're selling like products for the face a lot of the time. You're selling makeup and you want to make it look as good as possible. Obviously, it's hard when you're retouching skin as well and you want to sell a foundation. You want to see someone with obviously like flawless skin and someone with flawless foundation on their face. But at the same time, I think that there's a fine line where you can walk and with retouching, it is important in a sense to be showing people's natural beauty as well and what the foundation would generally look like. Just look for those minimal distractions like stray hairs, things on the skin that might be, I guess, distracting from the foundation, like a blemish that wouldn't usually be there. Because like, that's the thing, like for a lot of us, it's temporary imperfections that are, you know, on people's faces, you know, whether it's like the hairs or whether it's, you know, like I said, blemishes. Everything else should really be left intact. And people's faces, like I really appreciate looking at people's beauty through the lens and through beauty photography, because everyone is so different. And yeah, I don't appreciate heavy retouching anymore. I don't like to look at my job through that way anymore. And there's definitely clients that will be like, oh, we want the skin to be completely like, you know, no pores or anything. And that's when I have to say, like, I actually think it will look better. And sometimes it's about educating your clients as well. Sometimes, you know, if they really want to go down that road, it's like, well, maybe that particular wrinkle will look better in place. I'd prefer not to retouch that wrinkle out, because that's like what people really look like, you know, when they're smiling. Or, you know, I'd prefer to not retouch that freckle out because that's natural on her face. Like, I don't want to remove things that are naturally on her face or his face. It's about like kind of educating them too, because sometimes they're unaware of how the public view that sort of thing too, and how we're viewing things as a retoucher as well.
My rant is that I see so many brands selling skincare or foundation, BB cream, makeup, whatever, but then you're heavily retouching the image. Like, isn't the whole point is to just show the product as is, but you're retouching it? And also, They never use people with acne or blemishes. It's always like flawless, perfect. Okay, listen, I get it for editorials and all that stuff. Look, I'm a photographer. I retouch. I appreciate it. But when you're trying to sell me skincare, especially like, you know, there are specific skincare brands that are like, this is going to clear your skin, but you can tell the image is retouched.
Yes. Yep. And,
so why?
And the frustrating thing for me is, especially because like I feel like we were saying, most everyday people wouldn't look at this from this light. But when you're seeing, especially for me, before and afters are the ones that get me, because quite often I see before and afters, and you've got the before, and they try and make the person look, you know, as you know, like their skin's as bad as it could possibly be. And then in the after, they're either retouching the skin as well as putting the foundation on, retouching heavily on the skin, and using different lighting, using completely different lighting. Like, the lighting is the one that gets me too, because I'm like, can you just use the lighting, same lighting for both, and then I can really see what it looks like? But a lot of brands will do this and do the proper before and afters, because there's a difference between doing your commercial campaign where you're doing and you're selling the foundation and you're selling the creative kind of style of it, and that's your campaign images. And then you've got the before and afters where you're supposed to be using the everyday people that are going to be using this foundation, or they're going to be using this skincare product, and you're not even showing a clear vision of what this is meant to look like. That's what frustrates me.
Use someone with acne. Show us how it covers acne or a blemish or a pimple. Show us a pimple.
To that, like before and after, no retouching. Just show me before and after.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on us as image editors and retouchers to deliver like a perfect image, especially, you know, you are doing paid work and working with agencies, and they expect a certain quality of photo from you. And if they don't get that quality, you're not going to be working with them again. So maybe you send them an unretouched photo and they're like, don't really like this. I don't know if I'm going to send Jessica any more girls. So there is that pressure of, okay, well, I am going to retouch this, but to what degree? So I think that's what we're kind of discussing, is the degree in which it's retouched. And you can show a little bit of under eye circle, smile lines, totally fine. I think that's a good direction to head in. Right?
I actually don't. And especially with the under eye on that note, I actually don't like doing a lot with the under eye at all, because personally, I actually like under eye bags. Same. I don't know if I'm the only person, but I think they add a bit of character to someone's face, and I actually think they make people look like real. I don't know, like to not have any sort of under eye circle or bag is, and when you retouch that out as well, it looks a bit strange. I'm not going to lie. Like I've definitely, you know, experimented with that before, and I'm like, no, I don't like this.
I used to do that when I first started. I used to do the most craziest editing, like all out skin blurring and the pop of the eyes and so much colors, but I definitely tamed it down. It took me, a lot of personal progress.
And that's like so dependent on lighting a lot of the time too, and what lighting you're in, and whether the model's facing their face upwards, or, you know, and stuff like that is easily, you know, if you need to, if you're being required to by a client or something like that, then, you know, you can do things with lighting that'll make that softer or not as apparent. But I don't love retouching the under eye area out. I don't like that at all. I actually bring it back a lot of the time because it's, I don't know. I just think it adds character to someone's face.
It starts to make the image look fake. Like, let's be real here. And I used to add it like this in the beginning. When I first started, I was like, let's remove that. Because I saw everyone else doing it. And I'm like, let's just take this off right here. Take out all the lines.
Even today, I see it done. I see it done. And even on like campaigns here, I still see the under eye area removed. And I'm like, oh, that's not my idea.
I thought that things, maybe I'm just not up to date with the happenings.
Well, having said that, like I said, Australia isn't like, you know, in terms of the fashion industry here and the beauty industry, like it's happening, but it's not as big as, you know, areas in Europe or America. So you know, there's still, you know, campaigns that you see for smaller brands and things, and you're like, oh, I probably wouldn't have done it that way, but yeah.
Is there anything you want to talk about that anything in particular you want to mention that I might have missed? We didn't talk about Korea, but maybe we could do that in another video. We could talk about our whole trip. We went to Korea and Japan.
Oh, we did say we'd talk about that at the beginning of the video. So maybe
part 2, like for part 2, to hear about our trip to Korea. Look at Kaylee's like,
absolutely. And you know what? That's part of where I found my love for beauty photography as well, through K Beauty.
Absolutely. Oh, they have the best.
Oh my gosh.
We got to go and shoot there. I would love to.
I miss it so much.
We're going to manifest it. We're both going to go there, and then we're going to take pictures.
Absolutely. Like, I really want to work with some agencies over there, but I am starting to learn Korean. I'm really, really starting. I had started last year, but like, I'm really trying, and I want to get my Korean to a point where I could like write an email and be like, hey, I would love to work with one of the models through this agency or something like that, because I
support this so much. You're gonna be amazing.
We'll see
this.
We'll see how that goes.
You're gonna show us around Korea with your Korean. Like, we need someone in the group who knows Korean.
Oh my God, I know. I feel like Japanese isn't too much of an issue because I feel like everyone's pretty good with their Japanese, and like you're pretty good with your Japanese. I feel like
girl, it's getting so hard. I don't know. I'm kind of discouraged. I haven't practiced in like 5 days now, but I've been meaning to. But you inspire me now, because I know how long have you been learning Korean for?
So I started probably like dabbling in it maybe from the like, I don't know, mid to end of last year. And I was watching like a lot of Korean dramas, and I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to learn another language, and I've always dabbled in languages, but I've just never focused on one. And I was like, I love watching Korean dramas. They are like my thing at the moment. And I love it. And Dan and I like watch them literally like all the time. So I'm like, you know what? If this is going to help me, if I'm literally watching these all the time, then this is going to be something consistently that I'm doing to help me learn the language. So I may as well just continue with Korean. And I love the language. I think it's really cool.
What's your favorite K-drama? Give the viewers some recommendations here.
So Crash Landing on You is my favorite. Oh my God. Should I say the synopsis or it's you would love it actually. It's about North Korea, and it's about how a South Korean woman gets stranded in North Korea, and she meets one of the military men over there who is North Korean, and then they fall in love. And then
I'm watching it right now.
Go back to South Korea. Yes, you literally need to watch it. And it's so sad because the whole time you're thinking like, oh my God, he's from North Korea and she's from South Korea. And like, are they ever going to end up together? Like, how's this going to end? Because there's like, unless he defects, like, but then he doesn't seem like the type of person that's going to do that. And it's so great. You would love it.
So we talked about so many different things. I really want to thank my friend Kaylee for joining me today. You guys need to check out her course. She has a retouching course, and she has a pricing ebook. It's $8.99, right?
Yes, $8.99.
You guys check it out. So helpful. So much helpful information for photographers on pricing. And she goes in depth on so many different things. I'll have all those links down below. Kaylee, girl, you know I love you. You know we're talking right after this. Like, we're going to shut this chat and then we're going to message you.
We're just having my phone. Like, I kept forgetting we were recording this, like, and then you'd ask me a question. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I actually have to think of things and say, like, try and say smart things.
Hopefully the next chat we have is in person.
I mean, hopefully, and hopefully COVID just, hopefully it's not much longer.
Goes away. Look at this. My freaking hair is just. This is not gonna work.
It's great.
Kaylee, what is the Kaylee? Can you retouch this out? What is this? All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode of Low Res with Jess. Bye.
Bye.